Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. The fit for this video is Miles Morales. Let's take a look at a video.
The ancient Jews were literally hotboxing back in the day in their main temple in Jerusalem.
I think the majority of scholars would probably say it's plausible and some even probable that they were burning cannabis as part of their incense in the Jerusalem temple. However, we don't have any direct evidence for that. The evidence that we do have is rather indirect, and it comes in the form of two incense altars that were discovered with the Holy of Holies of the Judahite temple at Arad in the southern Negev. And this temple was in operation during the first temple period. It was probably decommissioned or destroyed around the reign of Hezekiah or the siege of Sennacherib. And both incense altars had burnt substances on their surfaces, and they were tested. And the smaller of the two incense altars was shown to have contained 3 different compounds of cannabis. And so that is definitive evidence that they were burning cannabis as part of their incense in the ritual worship that was going on in the Judahite temple at Arad. It is plausible that the same thing was going on in the Jerusalem temple. However, the fact that the other incense altar did not have any signs of cannabis in the incense burnt on it demonstrates also that they varied the type of incense that they used even within the same temple. And so we can't say for sure that the very type of incense that was found on the smaller incense altar was definitely being used in the Jerusalem temple. But I think it's plausible or perhaps even probable that would have been the case, but the evidence is indirect.
This is because they were burning day and night under instruction from God, and incense that contained canna busem. Now that's Hebrew for fragrant reed or stalk, and it also means cannabis. And that's been verified by the Hebrew University in 1980. Now, they also used an anointing oil to coat all the surfaces in the temple to purify it. This also contained canna busem. And this anointing oil was actually prescribed by God to Moses in Exodus when Moses sees the burning bush. This anointing oil contained 9 pounds of the flowers and leaves of canna busem.
So here's where we run into trouble. The phrase kane bosem only occurs once in all of the Hebrew Bible, and that's in Exodus 30, verse 23, as part of a recipe for the specific type of anointing oil that this content creator mentioned. Now, kane bosem is a compound phrase made up of kane, which means reed, stalk, grass, or something like that, and bosem, which can refer to the balsam tree, balsam oil, or just to any kind of fragrant oil or substance. And so the overwhelming majority of scholars agree that kane bosem is a reference to a fragrant reed or grass or something like that that was used in making this specific type of anointing oil. Now, the argument that this refers to cannabis, or that this is even the etymological root of the word cannabis, was probably made most thoroughly by Sula Benet in this 1975 paper, Early Diffusion and Folk Uses of Hemp, from this volume, Cannabis and Culture. But it has not gone on to widespread acceptance. The overwhelming majority of scholars reject the argument as being based on pretty flimsy etymological foundations. The majority of scholars don't consider that a valid argument, and no, it absolutely was not verified by the Hebrew University, not in 1980 or in any other year. So what we seem to have is an attempt to leverage the fact that we have discovered some incense that contained cannabis as evidence that all references to incense should be understood to include cannabis. But the fact that the larger incense altar that was discovered at Arad had burnt substances on top of it as well, but they did not contain cannabis, demonstrates that they didn't use cannabis in all of their incense. And so they varied their recipes for incense. The Hebrew Bible doesn't include kane bosem or any other potential reference to cannabis in any of the instructions for how to make incense. So the argument is based on this assumption, which is not really supported by any data. Now, that's not to say that it is false. As I said, I think it is plausible and perhaps even probable that they would have used cannabis, at least in some of the incense that was burnt in the temple in Jerusalem. But based on the data that we have, we cannot say that is definitively demonstrated. And it certainly does not demonstrate that the phrase kane bosem is a reference to cannabis or that it is the etymological root of cannabis. The majority of scholars still agree that that is not the case.